Whereabouts are you?
Sorry, I missed. What is it?
Are you in India, like that side of the world?
Yeah, in India. Yeah,
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. Great. So we can start?
I'm ready to rock.
Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host Avik, and this is the space where we explore the endless possibilities of giving your best life, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So today we are diving into a topic that couldn't be more relevant in today's chaotic and unpredictable world. How to floss your mind to stay positive, focused, and optimistic in a crazy world. And who better to help us navigate this journey than today's guest, Yuri Elkaim. So, welcome to the show, Yuri.
Thanks for having me, Avik. Good to be here.
Lovely, lovely. So, Yuri, before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. Dear listeners, Yuri is the New York Times bestselling author, former professional athlete, and the brilliant mind behind Healthpreneur. So his journey from battling health issues as a teenager to becoming a holistic nutritionist and coaching industry leader is nothing sort of inspiring. So he's touched over, 500,000 lives with his wisdom and practical tools for better health. So Yuri, welcome to the show. We are definitely thrilled to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks again for being here.
Amazing,
Thank you
amazing,
for allowing me to be here.
lovely, amazing. Let's dive right in, and because I know our listeners can't wait to hear from you. Yeah. So um, So you you have spoken about how mindset is a cornerstone for success in life. So if you can share, what does flossing your mind mean to you, and how did you develop this concept?
Well, most of us floss our teeth because we're told
Uh-huh.
that doing so is good for dental hygiene, but we don't
Okay.
really have a process for improving our mental hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've realized over the years is that our mind is like a garden. And if
Mm-hmm.
it's not tended to, weeds are able to take over very quickly. So
Okay.
personally, for me, I don't like gardening because
Mm-hmm.
I've done it before. And at least in my neck of the woods, if I'm not on top of it all the time, weeds just take over. And it's impossible to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I don't find that to be a very worthwhile use of my time. When it comes to my mind, though, that is the most important use of my time because if I don't tend to the garden of my mind,
Mm-hmm.
then the weeds that come about from years of conditioning, negative inputs, limiting beliefs start to take over. And
Yeah.
so my whole idea of mind flossing is just and it's not like a 5 minute a day type of thing. It's like a constant, never ending, always
Mm-hmm.
aware of who you are and what you're thinking process where you're recognizing where are you being held back, where are you staying comfortable, what's triggering you, why do you respond in certain ways, why do we overreact in certain conditions, why do we get
Mm-hmm.
fearful here, why do we start to worry over here, and like we start to just recognize how we show up in this world and recognize that it has nothing to do with anything outside of us because those are the circumstances, but how we interpret those circumstances is 100% in our control. So if first and foremost we're not aware, that's a
Okay.
problem. Second, if we are aware, then we have to look at, well, what can we do
Mm-hmm.
to move through those things that maybe don't support us? Like a lot of us grew up with parents that were very scarcity mindset. They,
Yeah.
have all sorts of beliefs that we took on because we were young and we had no choice because we simply modeled it. So mind flossing is simply the daily practice of being
Okay.
mindful of our own thoughts and doing whatever we can to improve our mindset in a way that supports our bigger goals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And how did your own health challenges, losing all your hair at 17, shape your perspective on staying mentally resilient?
Yes, when I lost my hair at 17, my dad's
Mm-hmm.
a Moroccan, so I had a lot of hair to begin with, and I lost all
Okay.
of my hair in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you start to recognize, well, okay, I look like a bit of an alien, but
Okay.
I also am fine otherwise. I have, for the most part, my health is in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
I can still play soccer. I can still do what I want to do. I have all my limbs. I don't have cancer. And so I think it gave me a really good perspective at the time to recognize that it wasn't that bad, to be honest. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was, maybe a little bit embarrassing for a moment, but then I was like, who cares? It's only hair.
Yeah.
Other people suffer from way worse. And I think having worked with so many health professionals over the years, some
Mm.
of the most evolved humans that I know have all been through their own health challenges or some type of trauma that, for the most part, has made them a better version of who they are. Because you have to face a lot of your own demons when you go through various challenges. And I think there's a lot of perspective that comes from that. So for me personally, I think that was maybe my first, recognition that, and at the time I wouldn't have called it mindset. I just would have said it is what it is. But looking back, I think it was one of the best things that ever happened for me because it gave me that perspective to recognize that there are other things that are more important than this little thing that I'm worried about right now, which is care. At other points in the future, throughout my business journey, there's all sorts of stuff that happens that, people can worry about that we can um, make seem bigger than they really are. And I think it's always good to remember, like we're a speck of dust in a big universe. Like none of this matters, but it does. And at the end of the day, we're all going to die, so it's all good, right? Let's just enjoy the ride and things are going to be okay. So I guess that's where kind of it all started for me.
What a well said, definitely. Yeah. I mean, in today's crazy world, staying optimistic can feel like almost impossible. So, what do you say? I mean, is the first step for someone who is looking to clear out the mental junk and start fresh?
Yeah. So number one, I don't think the world is crazy.
Okay.
And that's a belief that I have that other
Okay.
people may think very differently around. And part of the reason for that is because I choose to see the world the way I want to see it. So I don't think our world is objectively true for everyone. Like everyone sees their own reality. And this is only furthered by what they see on social media. So if someone is really into the belief that the world is a terrible place, they're going to naturally consume content that supports that. And then they're going to be shown more content that reinforces that, which in and of itself reinforces that myopic view of the world. So we all have a very myopic view of how the world operates, but we all operate in our own little bubbles. So my view is that the world's amazing. Yeah, there are problems for sure, but I would much rather be alive now than 1,000 years ago. Like to live in a village in a tent that can be burned down tomorrow by some random lunatics. Like we live in the most incredible time humans have ever been alive. Like the life expectancy, the quality of life, to be able to jump on a plane and go across the world in a day. I mean, it's amazing. And I also believe that all the problems we experience will be solved by human innovation. And that means that, in my mind at least, that life will only continue to get better. At least my life will, because I'm choosing for it to be better. So I think the first thing in terms of kind of clearing out some of the pollution in our minds is just being very careful of our inputs. So if you want to be overweight and fat, you can eat a lot of garbage. If you want to have a very polluted mind, you just consume a lot of garbage in terms of your inputs, what you watch, what you listen to. I tell my kids, I'm like, I don't mind if you guys watch YouTube, but just be very mindful of like you become what you watch. And I hear my kids talking like, yo, bro, that's lit. I'm like, sorry, what just came out of your mouth? Like, who are you? Right? Because they're modeling what they're seeing, whether it's their parents when they're young or people on YouTube who are doing some ridiculous stuff. All of us are very good at modeling. And whether we're kids watching YouTube or older and modeling successful people that we want to emulate, all of us model people or situations that inspire us or that we aspire to become like. So by choosing the right inputs, things that hopefully move us in the direction of our goals, and limiting inputs that are the opposite of that, that's really the first place to start kind of cleaning out our minds.
Lovely. And I mean, how does this step tie into your own daily practices for staying grounded?
Yeah, for me, I'm not like I don't sit on a cushion and meditate.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my process. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I mean, everyone has their process. For
Okay.
me, movement is my meditation. So I love to sweat. I love to work out. I love to be outside. I love to be captivated by nature.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are forms of meditation for me where I can connect to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, for me, for anyone, like whatever your practice is, that's all that matters. Like whatever, puts you into um, that connection. But I also think where a lot of people, where a lot of, I'm again, I don't want to pass judgment here, but I think a lot of people say they're growth oriented and they're working on their mindset and they do things that are very isolating and removed from the real world. So they go on a 10-day silent retreat. They, they do a 3-hour meditation, and that's fine. But what happens when life happens? So like, you get someone who's like super zen, they're super calm when they go on a retreat and they're like, oh my God, I feel the best I've ever felt. And then they get home and their kids are like tearing each other's hair out. How do you respond then? Because that's the real test. And if you come from that beautiful silent retreat where you're all zen and you're right back into
Mm.
reactive crazy mode as a parent, you've learned nothing. And I think a lot of us are delusional into thinking like, oh, I'm going to spend my time grounding myself and meditating.
Mm.
Amazing if it actually grounds you so that when the real world happens, you can respond in a way that's a little bit more
Mm.
enlightened, right? So for me
Exactly.
personally, I'm a better human when I
Mm-hmm.
sweat. So if I can go for a swim, if I can go for a run, if I can just do something to sweat, I
Mm.
am able to just calm my mind. I'm more calm, I'm more zen, and then I can show up better in
Mm.
everything else that I do. So everyone has to find their thing, but I do think that that thing, very much like in sports, the way we practice is the way we play. I think the same thing needs to happen here. Is like if we are practicing a certain practice, it should translate into becoming a better version of ourselves when things are
Mm.
crazy. Otherwise, what's the point of it all?
Yeah, exactly. And so let's talk about gratitude. I mean, it's a buzzword these days, but how does gratitude play into staying optimistic and focused?
Well, if you're grateful, naturally
Mm-hmm.
you are focused on better things, right? Like you can like just the very simple practice of being grateful for anything, like the walls in this room, the ceiling over my head. I think being grateful at a very basic level is very powerful. It's also one of the easiest things to completely overlook because we have this whole like this hedonistic effect, which is where we get accustomed to new things very easily. And so what once used to be like this beautiful new, oh my God, this is amazing, 30 days later is just like, it's like the rest of everything else, right? Like you buy a new car, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love it. 30 days later, you're like, you don't even vacuum it anymore. So I think just being, again, going back to just being present, being mindful, recognizing the beauty in everything. And again, for like, I think a lot of this is like, it's our perspective. Like there's so many things that happen in life that we can look at as like, why did this happen to me? For me, it's like, like, I'm so grateful this happened for me. Because when I lost my hair at 17, everyone's like, oh my God, that must have been really hard. I'm like, no, I don't think so, to be honest. Like when I'm thinking back, it wasn't that bad. I'm actually very grateful that it happened because it put me on this path to then help so many other people. And so a lot of times gratitude is simply a shift in perspective. Like I'm not by any means someone who naturally gravitates to gratitude. 100% not. My default setting is to look for problems and to improve things. So instead of recognizing the beauty in my kids, I look for things that bother me and criticize. That's kind of my default setting. Or I could just be like, hey, I'm super grateful that these crazies
Mm.
are in my life. It's amazing. I love them so much. And you like, and for me, it's I have to flip the switch in my head
Okay.
instead of like complaining about what something isn't to seeing the beauty in what is. And
Mm.
that's just practice, right? It's just a matter of being mindful enough to say, this is
Hmm.
amazing, even if it's
Yeah,
crazy, right?
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And on this only, like, what advice would you give to someone who struggles to find things to be grateful for?
Make a list. Like you have to, you're going to be consciously incompetent when you start this. So you're going to write down, I think one of the easiest things is at the end of the day, write down a number of things you're grateful for from that day. I'm grateful that it was sunny. I'm grateful that I brushed my teeth. I'm grateful that I've got two legs. I'm grateful that I can breathe. Like it's going to sound so stupid, but you have to start to groove new pathways in your nervous system. Because if the default setting is to always be like, I'm grateful for nothing, I'm happy about nothing. It's a question I ask my kids all the time. I'm like, what are you happy about today? And they're like thinking about it forever. I'm like, really? Like, is there not one thing you can be happy for? And they'll mention something. I'm like, good, right? Let's build on that, right? And it's all it is. It's a matter of it's focus. It's all of us have a miner's cap, metaphorically speaking. And we can only, like the flashlight on the miner's cap, can only focus on one thing at a time. We're either focused on the gold or we're focused on the dirt. And we have to train ourselves to focus on the golds. And we can be as granular as like to the smallest level of detail where we would have an infinite number of things to be grateful for, or we can just chunk up and be like, I'm grateful that I woke up this morning, right? I'm grateful that I have money in my bank. I'm grateful that, whatever.
Mm.
And so just writing at the end of every day before you go to bed, things you're grateful for will automatically shift your mind into thinking around and focusing on those things. You will notice them more often. And because you notice them more often, you will feel better. And because you feel better, you will experience more things in your life that make you feel better. And your whole life spirals in a very positive way. So it starts off very robotic, writing it down. But ultimately, you want to get to the point where gratitude, like you almost feel like crying. Like you're so grateful for, I don't know, like whatever, like a bottle of water or a beautiful view that you can see outside your window. Like it moves you to such a level that there's so much beauty. You're so grateful for being able to experience that. And you don't have to write that down. That's a feeling. And that's ultimately, I believe, where we want to get to with gratitude is getting to the point where you could literally cry. That's how grateful for you.
Mm.
That's how grateful you are for whatever it is you're trying to be, grateful for.
Lovely. And one of the biggest struggles people face is staying positive during these setbacks. So, what advice would you give to someone who feels like, life keeps throwing curveballs their way?
Again, it's just reframing their perspective,
Haha.
right? I'm like, so a victim is someone who says, this happened to me. A victor is someone who says, this happened for me. A victim is, they did this to me. A victor is, what can I learn from this? So this thing happened for me. What can I learn from this? How does this help me grow? And it's all it is it's having the tool of asking a better question, which completely shifts your perspective. And this is one of the most important things I think we can build as humans is a better toolkit of questions that we can ask ourselves that shift how we see the world. So something quote unquote bad happens, bad is it's neutral. It's the meaning we give to it that makes it good or bad. And one of the things that I think I've learned the hard way over my journey in business, especially, is that there is no good or bad. It's all the same, right? Like if I have a quote unquote bad month, what makes it a bad month? Like we had to let go of 4 people on our leadership team last year. Was that a bad thing or was it an amazing thing because I got much more clarity about exactly what I'm looking for these hires in the future? And so really all it is, Avik, is it's a shift in perspective. It's a different question we have to ask ourselves instead of saying, oh, why did this happen? Why did this always happen to me? That's a terrible question to ask, as opposed to what can I learn from this? How is this serving me? How can I grow through this? If you ask better questions, you get better answers and you'll feel a lot better.
Exactly. Very true. Yeah. So, um, If you could give our listeners just one mental floss practice to start today, what would it be?
It'd probably be what I mentioned earlier about the gratitude at the end of the day. So if you have like a notepad, just write down like my top three wins from today are, and just
Hmm.
write them down. And just get into that practice of focusing your mindset on what is working well in your life. I think that's the
Hmm.
simplest thing all of us can do. No excuses, no matter how good or how bad your life is. There is
Hmm.
always good to focus on. You just have to recognize it.
Yeah, exactly. Lovely. So, Yuri, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story with us today. And it's really been a truly enlightening conversation. And I'm
Great.
sure that our listeners are leaving this episode with a whole new set of tools to stay positive, focused, and optimistic in this whirlwind of a world. So, dear listeners, if you love this episode, be sure to share it with someone who could use a dose of positivity. And as always, do not forget to subscribe to Healthy Mind and Healthy Life so you never miss an inspiring conversation. So, I mean, Yuri, where our listeners can connect with you and learn more about your work.
Yeah, thank you, Avik. So I guess one, if they've enjoyed this conversation, they can grab the
Hmm.
book called Mind Floss on Amazon. It's like
Hmm.
99 cents.
Okay.
Otherwise, our YouTube channel at Healthpreneur. I share all of my knowledge to help
Hmm.
growing health businesses online there. So that's
Okay.
YouTube at Healthpreneur. And then if they want to connect with me, they can join me on Instagram and just drop me a DM at Healthpreneur. And if there's any way that we can support them, we'd be happy to.
Perfect. Lovely. Great. So, fantastic. And until next time, take care of your mind, dear listeners, your body, and your spirit. And stay healthy, stay inspired, and see you soon.